Come on up.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right, it's good to be here this morning. Good to see you all here to celebrate this safe week, and thank you for coming. So good morning. It is a pleasure to welcome you to Elizabeth City for the 3rd annual North Carolina Safe Week of Action to promote safe gun storage. Before I begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the tragedy that struck our Elizabeth City State University family. Everyone should be able to celebrate and gather with friends without a threat of violence. I want to extend my condolences to the family of Isaiah Caldwell, who tragically lost his life in the shooting. The full weight of the Elizabeth City Police Department is behind bringing the shooter to justice. Gun violence is an epidemic in our community, and too many of our children and teens become victims of it. Safe storing firearms goes a long way towards preventing accidental gun deaths among children and helps to combat gun theft. In 2024, 27 guns were stolen from vehicles and homes in Elizabeth City. This is something that is absolutely preventable. I'm calling on each and every person to ensure their firearms are stored safely and securely. I want to thank the Governor, the Department of Public Safety, and every single person who works to promote North Carolina Safe initiative. Now I have the honor to introduce our next speaker, the Governor, Josh Stein. Governor Stein is honored to serve North Carolina as the 76th governor. His faith teaches him that we are all called to make a difference, and his parents raised his brother, sister, and him to try to do the right thing and ground them and share values of freedom and opportunities. Governor Stein is committed to creating economic opportunities for every North Carolinian, investing in public schools, developing our workforce, and keeping people safe. Since day one in office, he has been laser focused on helping Western North Carolina rebuild in the Hurricane Helen initiative. Josh and his wife, Anna, are members of Temple Beth in Raleigh. They are proud parents of Sam, Adam, and Leah, who all attended North Carolina public schools, just like they did. Please join me in welcoming Governor Stein.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Chief Graham, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for your leadership of the Elizabeth City Police Department. First week on the job.
Yes, sir.
How's it going?
It's going good.
I love it. Well, what I want to do is we have a box full of gun locks. We want you to be able to have that so that you and your police officers can help distribute them in the community to keep folks safe.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm very pleased to be joined by Deputy Secretary Billy Lassiter, Mr. Fawn Dockery, Dr. Eric Schlog. Pleased to see Elizabeth City Pasquotank Superintendent Keith Parker. I saw him a moment ago. Where did he get to? There he is, hiding over there. We have Elizabeth City Chancellor-Select Dr. Keith Hargrove. Nope, unfortunately. College of the Albemarle President Jack Bagwell. Thank you for being here. The students were talking to me earlier, and they were telling me how instrumental that you are in their education. So we want to thank the College of the Albemarle. And very pleased that Senator Bobby Hanig is here with us as well. As the chief mentioned, we're still mourning the loss of Isaiah Caldwell and the tragic shooting that happened at Elizabeth City State. And I want to thank Elizabeth City Police for their continued efforts to identify the perpetrator. Too many North Carolina families, like Isaiah's, are touched by gun violence. And all of us have a role to play in making our communities safer. That's why NC S.A.F.E Week of Action is so important. Today, firearms are the leading cause of death of our children, ages 1 to 17. It's not car accidents, it's gun violence. And from 2019 to 2021, the rate of firearm deaths among children more than doubled. These deaths are even more tragic because many of them are preventable. A quarter of North Carolina's gun owners report that they keep a gun loaded and unlocked in their home. Let me say that again, loaded and unlocked. That means anyone who can get their hands on that gun could use it. I understand that many families want to have a firearm accessible for their own safety in case of emergency. I get it. But we also know that that decision comes with real risks to your loved ones. A toddler could accidentally discharge it. A visitor to the house could grab it and use it. A young adult suffering a mental health crisis could use it to harm himself or others. I was telling Senator Hennig on the way over here about a man who's become a friend in Charlotte whose son was having a mental health crisis, hit that lowest of moments, tried to break in to the family gun safe to use it against himself, and he could not get in. They were able to intervene, take him to crisis care. He's now enrolled in college, happy, healthy young man. He would not be here today if his father had not locked his guns in a safe at home. We know that 80% of youth firearm suicides involve a weapon that belonged to a family member. 80% of juvenile school shooters get their weapon from a family member or a friend's home. These two horrifying statistics are tragic and completely avoidable. We have to use every tool at our disposal to keep our children safe. Many folks own their gun to keep their families safe. Storing the gun safely is another way that we can keep our families safe. First, keep the gun unloaded when it's not being used to reduce the risk of tragedy. Next, use gun safes or gun locks, like the ones I just gifted to the police chief, to keep your firearms out of the wrong hands, especially your children's. Third, storing firearms and ammunition separately from each other creates an additional layer of security. Fourth, apply these rules both at home and in your car. Chief Graham, I understand Elizabeth City has been having trouble with people breaking into cars and stealing guns, and you are not alone. And Sheriff, I want to thank you for being here as well, Sheriff Wooten. 431 reported gun theft from vehicles in 2023 alone. That was a 40% increase from 2020. Folks, if you carry a gun in your car, lock it up. Once we've taken these steps in our own homes and our own cars, we cannot stop there. We have to talk to our family, friends, and neighbors about the importance of safe storage. The more that people secure their firearms at home or in their car, the safer that we in the community all become. Everyone here understands this. You're here because you believe in it, and I want to thank you for what you're doing to help spread this important word about safe storage. I also want to thank the people at the Department of Public Safety for their hard work in promoting safe storage practices, including all of the events this week for NC S.A.F.E Week of Action. Their press conference, there's community days happening all across North Carolina. Secretary of Department of Public Safety, Eddie Buffalo, Elizabeth City fella. Unfortunately, he had a conflict. He was kind of mad at me that we chose today to be here because obviously he wanted to be here with his friends and neighbors from Elizabeth City. But we are pleased to be joined by Deputy Secretary Billy Lassiter. And at this time, Billy, I'd like you to come forward.
Thank you so much, Governor, and thank you for your leadership on this issue and on all the issues that we work on public safety across the state of North Carolina. I've known Governor Stein for many years, and he's done a lot of work on school safety. We're in a school today, worked on a lot of legislation back in the day on passing some of the first school safety legislation in the state of North Carolina. Senator Hague, I appreciate so much. You were one of the co-sponsors of the bill that actually started NC S.A.F.E. in the state of North Carolina. And when it got held up for a little while, he was the one that helped make sure it got pushed to the floor. So I appreciate your leadership also in making sure that this bill passed and that we are able to do this campaign across the state of North Carolina. Thank you to our law enforcement partners that are here today, the sheriff and the police chief. I also want to thank my staff. A lot of staff from the Department of Public Safety and the Division of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention are here today. This is an additional task to what they do each and every day, trying to keep kids safe across the state of North Carolina. But they've been going out and doing public events all across the state of North Carolina, giving out these gun locks that the governor just gave to the police chief. These gun locks, we've now given out over 120,000 of them across the state of North Carolina, which is awesome. These are really easy to use, but as the governor said, this is the first step. We want to make sure beyond just using the gun lock, we want to make sure that people actually use a gun safe. That is the best and most practical way to make sure that that gun does not get into the wrong hands in our communities. I want to thank our staff for going out and having these community events across the state of North Carolina, from everything from the Liver Mush Festival down west to coming to law enforcement night outs that we've done across the state of North Carolina. Over 120 events over the last 3 years where we've been distributing gun locks to people across the state of North Carolina. As the governor said, this is the week of action. This is the week that we really want to emphasize that people take the right steps to make sure that their firearms are safely stored. It couldn't be a better timing. School is getting ready to get out here in Elizabeth City. They're graduating tonight, so congratulations to our graduates that are in the back there. But if you live in this community and you're a grandparent and you're going to keep the kids over the summer, and maybe you don't lock up your firearms because you don't have a kid normally in your house, today is the day to take action. Make sure that that firearm is locked up in your house before a grandkid comes over or the neighbor's kids come over and find that gun accidentally. We've had 5 kids under the age of 5 in the state of North Carolina this year alone get shot by a firearm that was unsecured in the home. That is completely preventable, folks. Completely preventable by taking the right steps and safely storing your firearm in your house. We got involved in this in juvenile justice because we've seen the statistics. 4 years ago, 4% of juvenile crime in the state of North Carolina involved a firearm. Last year, that was 14% of all juvenile crime involved a firearm. When a kid picks up a firearm and commits an incident in their community, a crime in their community, takes a gun to a school and terrorizes that school community, it affects the whole community. Last year, we had 87 guns that were taken off of kids in the state of North Carolina on school campuses. 75% of those guns came from the kid's own home. Another 12% came from a grandparent's home. And so these are coming from our homes. As a parent, you have a responsibility. If you're a gun owner, yes, you have the right to possess that firearm, but you have the ultimate responsibility to make sure that that gun does not get into the hands of a young person and they bring that gun to school or terrorize their community with that gun. Yes, you can teach your gun safety to young people. I'm a scout leader. I teach gun safety to young people all the time. But we always do it in a supervised way, and we make sure that we spend the first 3 hours of that course making sure to go over safety so that those young people understand it. You cannot just simply say to a young person, don't ever touch it, because that's the same thing you said about their Christmas gift and they found it, right? The same thing is true here. You can't just say don't touch it because they are curious and they will find it, and they will, unfortunately, a lot of times use that to harm themselves or others in your household. So I'll emphasize what the governor said. Don't let the thing that you bought to protect your family be the thing that ends up harming your family. Lock it up every time. Keep it safe. It only takes a few seconds to do the right thing. So please take this message. Help be our disciples. Go out there in the community and tell folks about how important it is. And if you need some gun locks, we got some for you. And we make it really easy. There's a QR code on here that shows a state highway trooper using the gun lock and how to use the gun lock appropriately. We've got it in English and Spanish, so there are no excuses. As I tell people all the time now, there's no excuses. We're giving you the resource to make sure that you do the right thing in your community. Next, I want to call up Fawn Dockery, who's become a good friend of mine over the last few years. Fawn lost his young daughter to an incident of gun violence where a gun was not safely stored in the home, and he wants to share his story with you real quick this morning. Thank you, Fawn, for being here.
Greetings, Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and all the highly esteemed people here in the room today with us and virtually. I am Fawn Dockery, the husband of the wonderful Kimberly Dockery, the father of Genesis Dockery, and the father of Amara Dockery. Two of those names of my family I presented are here physically with us today. One of those names, the late, our wonderful, eternal love, Genesis Dockery, can only be present in our hearts and our spirit. On July 25th, 2023, around the hour of 3 p.m., I received a frantic call from the babysitter where my 5-year-old daughter, Amara, and my 8-year-old daughter, Genesis, was being babysat at. Along with many other children. There was an unsecured firearm in the home. And tragically, my daughter Genesis had been shot. 2 days later at UNC Chapel Hill Health, Genesis would succumb to her injuries. I'm gonna be very direct and very clear. This case was very preventable. Takes about 12 minutes to have the safe gun storage conversation, to secure a trigger lock, a gun lock, and to secure that firearm in a safe. 12 minutes would have changed my family's life, would have changed their family's life, and would not have negatively impacted our community. All because of negligence and an unsecured firearm. Deputy Secretary Lassiter and Governor Stein gave you the numbers. I'm giving you a face. I'm giving you a name. I'm giving you an incident. We, the Live Like Genesis Project, the family of Genesis, we come out and we advocate for safe gun storage and gun violence awareness. We too also give away gun locks. We ask and we challenge each and every one under the sound of my voice, whether you're virtual or in this building, to visit NCSA.org. There's PDFs to show you and walk you through having that conversation with all the occupants in your home. There's PDFs to show you if you want to host and be able to give away gun locks in your area, right there on that website. The problem we have with safe gun storage in North Carolina, we can fix. It's not biochemical, neuroscience, or rocket science. This is common sense. Secure your firearms effectively. At this time, I'll be presenting Dr. Toshlaw.
Good morning. My name is Eric Toshlaw, and I am by profession a trauma surgeon. I have the honor to serve as Trauma Medical Director for East Carolina University Health Medical Center, the Level 1 adult and pediatric trauma center serving Eastern North Carolina, which is the largest trauma system in the state of North Carolina. I'm truly honored to have been asked to speak today to provide a clinical bedside perspective on this issue, this topic, gunshot injury and death. And by virtue of my 25-year career at ECU, this healthcare epidemic is a topic quite close to my heart. Trauma centers categorize injured patients in a standard binary fashion depending on the mechanism by which the victims are injured. And specifically, we classify injury as blunt injury, car crash, fall from a deer stand, ATV crash, or penetrating trauma. And penetrating trauma is largely comprised of gunshot wounds. Most rural trauma centers, such as ECU Health, experience penetrating mechanisms of about 2%. So about 2 out of 100 patients that we admit to the trauma center are penetrating injury. The penetrating rate at ECU is 20%. It's a four to five-fold higher than our demographic would predict. And what does that mean? Well, it means that our trauma center is vastly more similar to the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, or George Washington in Washington, D.C., or trauma centers in the city of Chicago. Of the 4,000 trauma patients we are now evaluating each year at ECU, greater than 500 of those patients have been shot. And so many of these victims are children. Children who suffer unintentional gunshot wounds from inappropriately stored guns in the home. I'm going to recount to you our experience at ECU, and this is not in the last 10 years, this is in the last few weeks. And I'm going to try to keep this very confidential. 14-year-old male, gunshot wound to the brain, inflicted by his brother with an unsafely stored weapon. 5-year-old male, gunshot wound to the brain by his brother, unsecured weapon. 13-year-old female, gunshot wound to the arm at a family party, unsecured weapon. 18-month-old male, gunshot wound to the heart by a family member cleaning gun. He died in the operating room at ECU. In January 2025, we had 5 adolescent gunshots within a single week. 2-year-old male, gunshot wound to the abdomen with family handgun, unsecured. 4-year-old male found handgun in the couch console, shot himself in the leg, fractured femur. Unfortunately, I could consume the remainder of our time with more cases, but this is the reality that we are experiencing at the trauma center literally every day. In 25 years, I've cared for hundreds of pediatric gunshot victims. Many have died, many are permanently disabled. Gunshot, as the governor referred to, is now the leading cause of death in the United States for adolescents and young people. Let's ponder that as a society. Our children are dying most frequently of gunshot in this country. I reviewed a recent study as I speak on gun violence around the country. I reviewed a recent study that analyzed gunshot in the pediatric population worldwide. This study looked at 30 developed countries similar to the United States: Canada, Europe, the United Kingdom, Japan, Ireland, and looked at pediatric gunshot death over a time period. Between the ages of 5 and 16, 95% of gun death in the pediatric population occurs in one country, the United States. So gunshot death, as you have heard, is an epidemic. Nearly 47,000 Americans died of gun-related injuries in 2023. While this statistic is staggering, it is important to note the impact that mental health has on this epidemic. In any given year, 2/3 of those 40+ thousand Americans who die of gunshot wounds are dying by suicide. And children are being disproportionately impacted with the suicide epidemic. Between 2011 and 2020, the U.S. experienced a 150% increase in adolescent suicide. So let's consider the value of this invaluable safe storage program. Consider the impact this can have on the suicide proportion alone. With help, most people who attempt suicide and survive do not attempt again and recover. Thus, survivability is really about the lethality of the first attempt. And our other speakers have alluded to this. Tragically, if the suicide attempt is with a firearm, it is 80 to 90% successful. So safe storage would have an immediate and significant impact on this epidemic. So I would like to close by acknowledging the true privilege of being asked to speak today in support of Governor Stein in this initiative, which, as I have stated, is incredibly important. And to our law enforcement personnel here today and all those integral to this invaluable initiative, I would close with a comment and a question. I believe we love our children. That is not a partisan observation. The other observation I have is that we have the power to stop this, as you said. We have the power to end this now. The question I must pose to you and we must pose to ourselves is, do we have the will to do so? Thank you.
That concludes our program, so I just want to say thank you to everybody and thank you to all our speakers. What we're going to do now is do some photos with folks. I'm going to ask the governor just to pop out in the hallway with me and members of the media who would like to ask a few questions.